Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today. Some of you might be familiar with GoToWebinar, but in case you're not, I will briefly explain some of the features. Up on the screen, you will see what your audience view of GoToWebinar should look like. Currently, everyone is muted. If you're having any issues with the webinar, you can raise your hand by clicking on the icon, or you can type into the question box. If you have a question, we will have a longer question period at the end, but we do recommend that you post your question in the chat box so we can field it at that time. Please let us know now if you're having any problems with the webinar. Great, so it looks like we're ready to go. Thanks so much again for your time. I'm now going to pass it over to Dr. Alisa Almas, the Principal Investigator of the Childhood Experiences Questionnaire, who will be presenting today insights into children's early experiences, moving CHEQ data to action.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see we have such a large group joining us for the webinar today, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us and listen in to some of the information that I'm going to share today, not only about the project, but as well about the research that from children's early experiences that informs our project and the work that we do using this data. So for those of you who don't know, I am a faculty research associate here at HELP, and as the principal investigator, which is kind of a funny academic jargony title, I sort of oversee the project, the creation of the questionnaire, and ensure that the data and the process for collecting that data has high integrity from a research perspective, as well as is used in the best way we can to inform policy and practice for those who work with our data, taking it a step further than UBC. For those who aren't familiar with the Human Early Learning Partnership, we are an interdisciplinary collaborative research institute here at UBC with a focus on child development. HELP, as it's called, was founded by Clyde Hertzman in 1999, and we're currently under the direction of Dr. Kim Schonert-Reichel, who is a world-renowned researcher and sort of activist for children's social and emotional learning and well-being across early childhood and adolescence. At HELP, our goal really is to work to improve the health and well-being of children through interdisciplinary research. So this means working with a number of different academics and colleagues at the university and the hospitals and beyond, and then to take that research and that work and mobilize it in a form of knowledge to community, so that the research that we do actually is put into practice. A lot of this work fits in with our major vision, which is all children thriving in healthy societies. This is a grounding factor of all of our work at HELP and is really at the foundation of all that we do. And we know that when we think about child development and children's well-being, that researchers for a long time have really emphasized and focused on the early years as a critical period in children's development for setting the stage for subsequent success. And if you look at this quote from Dr. Jerome Singer, we know that the activities that are the easiest, the cheapest, and most fun to do, these kind of everyday things like singing, playing games, storytelling, are also the best for child development. And the goal of the Childhood Experiences Project and the questionnaire that we've developed is to really capture children's experiences with these types of really foundational but simple everyday things to get a sense of what types of experiences children are having that influence their success. Just a few more points here on early experience. As I've said, these are really foundational to all subsequent learning and development across a number of different domains. Early experiences that we're interested in are those that provide opportunities for exploration and creativity and expose children to new people, new peers, thus providing opportunities for learning and to practice their social skills. So we've really sought to capture experiences across a number of different areas that research tells us are important for subsequent well-being. The question has always been, though, how do we measure these? How do we measure these in a systematic way in our province so that we can use that information, that data, to take action to fill in the gaps in children's experiences? And that's really the reason we developed the Childhood Experiences Questionnaire. The questionnaire as a tool for systematically collecting data on children's early experience from parents or caregivers who during the early years are really the people that are the best reporters on this information. So this is the first time at HELP that we have asked parents or caregivers to report with the EDI, the Early Development Instrument, one of our long-standing tools. Teachers have been reporting on skills and competencies for about 15 years. And with the newer MDI, this is where students themselves provide the reporting. And with the CHEQ, we're filling in the gap on reporting by asking for parents to provide us with the information on that early time period in children's lives, which is so critical. We developed the CHEQ through a very collaborative process that we're quite proud of. We not only drew from the scientific literature on research on child development and early experience, but we also connected with and worked with educators, parents, children, community members, folks in the school districts, early years partners, those in health, all sorts of sectors, to really find out what information on experiences is valuable to those who will actually use it to make a difference in children's lives. So starting from a place of research, we know what experiences are critical for child development, but also how do we ask those questions and what types of details do we ask in order to provide enough information to our partners to make that information useful. And again, we sought to capture experiences from all sorts of different areas. Key areas identified by research that impact children's development, not only in the early years, but beyond. I'll give you a few basics on the questionnaire itself, just for those who aren't familiar. As I said, it's completed by parents or guardians. It's administered at the beginning of kindergarten. We looked at a number of different periods of time during which we could administer the questionnaire, but what we realized is in order to get systematic data, so data collected at the same time during the same period of children's development, we needed to do it when everybody was in the same place. And the first place in children's lives that everybody shows up for is kindergarten. So that's why we do it in the first couple of weeks, typically during the gradual entry period. And we ask that a CHEQ leader, either a principal or teacher at the school, takes charge of implementation at the school to ensure that parents have the opportunity to complete it. This is done online and it typically takes about 30 minutes. I've mentioned to you that we've tried to capture experiences from a number of key domains, and you can see them here. For those who are familiar with the EDI, Early Development Instrument, you can see that the first three domains map on really well to skills and competencies we capture with the EDI. And then the early learning and care and community and context domains were added to the CHEQ to not only capture the specific or particular experiences of this time period with respect to preschool, daycare, and programming, but also broaden our knowledge to the community and context to capture those sort of broader experiences that influence the family and, as a consequence, children. Within each of these domains, we capture questions or have questions that capture information on a number of different specific areas. And these make up the individual sections on the questionnaire and their subsequent reports. For reporting, we provide 4 levels to our school district partners. So individual reports on each child, then a classroom aggregate report, a school aggregate report, and then one at the district level. The really fantastic thing about the CHEQ system is that reports are available immediately. So as soon as a parent or caregiver answers questions about a particular child, the individual report is immediately available for a principal or teacher to view or download to help that individual get a better sense of the child's experiences prior to kindergarten and potentially inform supports or practice around that particular child. Similarly, the classroom and school reports are instantly available, and as each new parent completes, they're updated or revised right online so that, again, that information is immediately available so that staff at the schools can use them right at the beginning of the school year if they feel it would be helpful. Once the data collection window closes at the end of September, a district report for all schools in a particular district that have used the CHEQ that September is available for school district staff to take a look at their incoming population of kindergarten students and families and to use over time to track change. This year, in response to feedback we got from our teacher and principals in districts that we've been working with as part of the pilot project, we've created something called a snapshot report, which is a 1-page quick glance at a particular kindergarten classroom so that teachers have a kind of fast way of getting a sense of the variability in experiences that their incoming kindergarten class has had that they can then use as a jumping off point for diving into the full, longer classroom or school report. With respect to the project itself, last year we were in 9 districts in BC, and in 2019, this September, we'll be in 14 districts. So we've been excited to see growing interest from communities throughout the province, as well as happy to have support from the Ministry of Education to roll the project out across the province in the next few years. We've been especially grateful to the districts who participated and used the tool for the last few years because of the incredibly helpful feedback we've received as we've developed it further. You can see that we've also dramatically increased the number of parents who've completed the CHEQ over the last few years, again, as we've streamlined the process for administering the questionnaire for our school district partners, as well as increase the amount of information available to families to help them understand the value of this data, not only for their own individual child, but also for their community. Now, I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you a little bit about the research that we have used to inform content areas on the CHEQ. And this research really highlights the importance of early experiences and the impact on children's development. One particular area that we focused on is children's emotions. And we know that when families or parents or other important adults talk to children about emotions, this has a number of important benefits, like bringing emotion to the attention of children in the first place. It provides an opportunity to explain the emotions of others and how that might match the experiences that they've had. And then it offers an opportunity to guide behavior in response to others' emotions. A number of research studies have been conducted over the last 30 years to look at this and have shown that family talk about emotions even as early as age 2 has predicted greater emotional understanding at age 6. So those early conversations about what emotions are and how to identify them can really help children with their emotional competence. And we know that a higher frequency of these conversations is related to higher peer acceptance and teacher-rated competence in preschool and kindergarten. So on the CHEQ, we include questions that ask how often have you had the chance to talk with your child about their emotions or feelings, your emotions or feelings, and the emotions or feelings of others. We also know the value of community programming and activities in the early lives of children. And the research tells us that when families participate in organized activities or drop-in activities related to sports, arts, culture, and music, that there are a number of important benefits to the family and to children. With respect to arts programs, these have been shown to be related to improved motor skills, language development, a number of things, including providing the opportunity for making friends and expressing emotion. What's so interesting about participation in early programming and activities is that the range of outcomes that they positively influence, not particularly always matching with exactly the content of the programming. So it's not just a benefit to their art skills or even expressing emotions, but also language development, decision making, so many important qualities for children's early learning. We also know that participation in organized sports is related to, again, a number of different outcomes across domain: health, emotion, behavior, academic skills, and problem behavior with peers. So these are critically important experiences for children to have, which is why on the CHEQ we ask which of the following activities children have participated or used. And then we ask about the frequency as well as what the barriers are to participation, because this is really key information we've seen from our community partners to use to identify activities that maybe aren't being used very frequently or particular barriers to access that community folks were unaware of. And they now, with the CHEQ, have concrete data to show the degree of barrier as well as what types of programs these may be affecting in order to take action. With respect to early literacy experiences, research has long showed that the critical pre-kindergarten period is really crucial for exposing children to a number of different experiences to support their language and cognitive development, and that this can often happen during parent-child or adult-child interaction. We know that reading together in particular provides exposure to higher amounts of language input, provides factual information, can spark an interest in books, and can impact the developing brain in a number of important ways. It also provides an opportunity for interaction with the caregiver that can often be really positive for the child, regardless of the contents of the books or the type of books that are being read. And so we do ask on the CHEQ important questions about these types of experiences, including reading books, talking with your child about pictures, signs, and words, doing rhymes, or even just reading books, magazines, or newspapers when the child is around to model that type of behavior. And we ask about the frequency of these types of experiences to see if there might be gaps in this content area, so that our partners that program for early years, whether it be in preschool or other types of activities, can potentially fill the gaps here that children are having at home. Outdoor play is another critical type of experience for children in the early years. We know again that this type of play gives a number of opportunities for positive development across different areas. One that's highlighted in this quote is the fact that natural play environments are also more gender neutral and offer more gender equity, which is such a critical experience for kids. And here you can see that again, there's been a number of important outcomes found in research that promotes children's well-being in the early years. On the check, we ask how often children have the opportunity to play outside in their neighborhood. Again, to get at the frequency of those types of experiences, to see where there's variability in the range of experiences across the province or in different neighborhoods and communities, to highlight that potential deficit. Social support is another really important part of family life that can influence children's well-being. There's been research over the last 20 to 30 years really highlighting the importance of social bonds and supportive relationships, not just for children, but for families. We know that higher levels of social support are related to lower levels of stress, as well as greater resilience when facing stressful situations. We know that social support promotes positive parenting behaviors, as well as increases feelings of parental efficacy. And on the check, we ask how many people you as a parent or caregiver can depend on in your neighborhood, as well as whether or not neighbors can be counted on to look out for children in the neighborhood, to really get at some of that social support in the family. As I mentioned at the beginning, our goal here at HELP is to really figure out ways to collect data that can be used to take action. We don't want to collect data just for the sake of collecting data or for research purposes only, but instead we want it to be useful, valuable information for those who are actually working with and making decisions that influence children's lives. So when we were conceptualizing the Childhood Experiences project and the questionnaire itself, we had a number of goals in mind. The first being to create a tool that is valid and reliable, that we can rely on to collect data with high integrity, so that we know that the data can be used in actionable ways and is based on science. We know that this data can be used then to make evidence-based decisions by a number of partners in community, schools, and districts to support children and families. And we know that the CHEQ is the first ever population level tool for collecting this type of early experience information in Canada. We also wanted to provide data that was useful for those in the schools, like teachers and principals who are working with those incoming kindergarten students right away. So it's important to us that we are able to provide that individual level data in the form of those reports I mentioned earlier that are instantly available in case an educator wants that immediate kind of contextual information on a child when they arrive and start kindergarten or their first sort of foray into the formal education system. And again, we've allowed for the immediate accessibility of classroom and school level reports for that reason as well, so that planning and programming can be guided, if need be, by some of the information parents are providing about context before kindergarten. It also is data that helps us understand the lived experiences of children and families in the community, and provides an opportunity to hear from parents or caregivers for the first time to inform that ability to monitor children's development over time that's so important to the work that we do here at HELP. What's also important to note about the CHEQ is part of the impetus for creation was also the fact that EDI, the Early Development Instrument, has been a tool used in BC for a number of years now, and provides important information about children's skills and competencies once they've entered school. But we were really missing that piece around early experience that informs or provides some insight into the range of variability in children's vulnerability rates. And so the CHEQ can be seen as a companion tool to the EDI and can be used in school districts and communities where that data is collected to look side by side at how children's experiences prior to kindergarten may influence the vulnerabilities that teachers are seeing once they arrive into the classroom. Now I'm going to turn things over to Elena Ewart, who is in charge of the implementation of the CHEQ in our school districts and communities. And I look forward to answering some of your questions at the end when she's finished here.
Great, thanks so much, Alisa. So as Alisa mentioned, I'm the implementation lead for the Childhood Experiences Questionnaire. I'm going to take about 5 minutes now to highlight a few implementation strategies. So this section is most relevant to our school districts and CHEQ administrators, but it should only take about a few minutes. And then at the end, we will conclude the webinar with a question period where Alisa and I will respond to any questions you have asked throughout the webinar. Great, so as many of you know, CHEQ data is more valuable if it is representative of most of the children in your school or community. So therefore, it's important to have as many parents and guardians as possible complete the CHEQ. The more representative the data is, the higher the likelihood that your school district, early years representatives, and community can use the CHEQ data to improve programming, offer services, and fund new initiatives to support children and families. Therefore, understanding how we could have more representative data was a key focus of our evaluation of the project last year. We had the opportunity to hear from many of you, including district leads, CHEQ leaders, and parents and caregivers, and we learned more about what worked well and did not work well during the CHEQ administration process. So today, we've summarized 6 implementation strategies for success, and we're going to go through these now. So we heard during our evaluation how valuable the training materials were and how often administrators use these. Administrators did highlight, though, that they wanted more streamlined versions of the materials. So what we've done for this year is we've condensed the training process into about a 5-minute training video and a single checklist, which is pictured on your screen there. And that includes all the important steps and deadlines for CHEQ administration. So this really is strategy number 1, and we'd really encourage you to use these materials that are now in a much more concise format, hopefully. CHEQ leaders and district leads also let us know time and time again that the best time of year that they found to host the CHEQ meeting is during gradual entry or the first few weeks of September. So our second strategy is to schedule the CHEQ for this time if possible. And if you're able to include the CHEQ during the gradual entry process, we definitely encourage you to add the meeting to your school schedule just so that parents and caregivers can plan ahead. Administrators and parents also let us know that sharing information about the CHEQ early on is definitely beneficial for them. So the third strategy is to share this information about the CHEQ at spring kindergarten events and maybe even events like Welcome to Kindergarten if your school is hosting one this spring. There are several resources that can be shared with parents and caregivers, including the CHEQ information sheet, which is on the checklist and the administration website, and you can find it linked there. You can also get in touch with us anytime if you'd like to include a few slides about the CHEQ in your Welcome to K presentation. Again, it's great to give incoming kindergarten parents and caregivers a heads up about when they can expect to complete the CHEQ in the fall. So our fourth strategy is to suggest, we suggest to CHEQ leaders that they use the invitation template, which is included on their checklist as well, and send an invite to the CHEQ meeting to parents and caregivers before the start of the school year. And this leads us to strategy number 5, which is to plan for additional supports for the meeting if possible. So we've heard a few examples of additional supports that have worked really well and have definitely come recommended by people who have administered the CHEQ in the past. So a few of these are having a designated computer lab for the meeting, putting up signage and directions to the meeting, organizing volunteer childminding and additional facilitators if possible. We definitely recommend providing headphones for parents so that those who would prefer to have the question read aloud can listen to the question in English. And then we also recommend, if possible, including translation services if you have those available in your district. And we've definitely heard that coffee, tea, snacks go a long way as well. So we realize these additional supports are not always possible and definitely vary school by school, but it's great if you can include them, and help staff are also always available and on call during the fall to help in any way we can. Great. And last but not least, strategy number 6 is to follow up with any parents or caregivers who did not complete the CHEQ. So administrators highlighted the importance of monitoring CHEQ completion and following up with those who did not attend the CHEQ meeting. Parents who did not complete the CHEQ can still complete the questionnaire at home if they wish or prefer to. And you can send these parents their login information by email or hand it out when they're at the school so they can complete the CHEQ at home. Great, so that concludes the webinar for today, and we'll now just return. I have Alisa here with me, and we will answer some of the questions that you've asked earlier in the webinar. So I'll just read them aloud now. So the first question that we received is great. It's, do we plan to report at the sub-region, neighborhood level, similar to EDI and MDI in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we certainly do. We know the incredible value that would be to communities to have that more detailed information available. Because the project has been piloting over the last few years, we need to wait until a particular district has very high completion rates for their data, because as Elena mentioned, the data really needs to be representative of the families in a district to be useful for us to share at that smaller neighborhood level. And we do have a few districts who have worked really hard to embed the CHEQ in their regular practice, and as a consequence, we'll be looking forward to piloting those new type of reports in the coming year or two.
Great. The next question was, would it be possible to share the slides from today? And absolutely, we are recording the webinar today, so we'll plan to share this recording, which will be posted to YouTube shortly after the webinar ends. So we'll send that to all attendees, and it'll be posted for your reference. And if you would like a copy of the slides, we can share those upon request as well. Next question is, are there plans to open access to the community? Oh, sorry, we've already had that one. With regards to opening reports to the community or community level, like MDI and EDI, they said that would be really helpful from their perspective. So that's great.
Yeah, and again, those will be available online in the same way that EDI and MDI reports are available, with the mapping as we move forward with the project.
Great. The next question is, how would a community service provider get access to the data, specifically around the outdoor play experiences and community activities?
So the reports at this point are shared through the school district leaders that work with us on the CHEQ. So we have been working with and empowering our school district leads to connect with community partners to share that data upon request. And so by connecting with the school district in your particular community, that is a way currently to access that type of data.
Great. Next question is, do you anticipate or plan to look at whether census level neighborhood data may supplement parent reported data on the CHEQ to provide a more comprehensive picture of the participants' early childhood experiences?
We do. We have always linked census data with our tools. The neat thing about the CHEQ is it's the first time we ask parents to report on their socio-demographic variables at an individual level. So we'll be able to compare a parent's own report of education and income and other factors with our census data. That information is collected at the end of the questionnaire and is confidential. It's used for research purposes only and is not shared with anyone outside of our institution, certainly not with school district partners, but is incredibly critical and valuable for research on factors that influence variability in children's experiences across the province.
Great. So we just received the next question, which is it available in other languages?
Also a great question. We certainly know that there's variability in the languages parents would prefer to complete the check-in across our districts. And now that we have finalized the questionnaire and our process for data collection, we are moving forward with translation. And we are currently conducting our first translation process into Simple Chinese, which will be piloted in particular districts this fall. And we will continue to move forward with subsequent language translations as the time continues.
Great, thanks, Alisa. So if there are any other questions at this time, if you could please just take them into the chat box. We can just take a minute here to respond. Oh, I see another one popped in. So will you include any linked reports with EDI and CHEQ, for example, stratification by vulnerability?
Also an amazing question. I cannot wait until we provide linked reports with this data because it is linkable using our personal education numbers for the province. Those reports will be fairly, they'll take a lot to put together. That's really interesting and important data to consider side by side. And we've already begun preliminary conceptualization of those type of reports. And they will be coming. It'll just take a little bit of time.
Great. So another question here is, you mentioned that the Ministry of Education is planning to work with you to roll out the CHEQ province-wide. Can you expand on this? It's exciting.
It is exciting and super encouraging. So far, it's been a really positive experience working with the ministry. It's encouraging to see their enthusiasm for collecting this type of data that can be used to actually take action and be valuable to a number of folks who are on the ground working with children. And so they have supported the project financially and emotionally for the last few years, and we're just working with them on future planning for the rollout, that funding, and ensuring that we have all of the people and time and resources we need in order to allow all districts in the province to take advantage of this data in the best way possible to make important differences in children's lives.
Great. Next question here is, what have the completion rates been for pilot districts in the past?
Well, last year we were super encouraged to see increasing rates of completion. I think our highest was like 91% in the district, although principals always like me to point out that some of them did achieve 100% completion in their individual schools. And Elena mentioned that there's a number of strategies that really, from doing it a few years now, our colleagues in districts have landed on as being the easiest and most successful ways for capturing all of the parent populations. We do recognize that districts vary in the challenges that families face in coming to school, completing something online in English. That takes time. And we've tried to work with districts to brainstorm strategies to help capture families who it is a bit more difficult for them to complete it for a number of reasons, but we found that principals and teachers have really made incredible efforts to capture all of the information that they can, and over time we've seen the rates increase dramatically, which is great.
Great. So from our perspectives, the question is, how would we use this information or data to inform larger health policy, and what ideas in that area come to mind?
Wow, that's a big question. We can see, I mean, first and foremost, that this information is used to really highlight the variability in the types of experiences children are having, especially with respect to physical health and well-being. And by using the information that we have around family socioeconomic factors, we can really speak to how discrepancies in those types of factors influence the health experiences children are having early on, the access families have to particular types of care, and the barriers that they're facing. And hopefully that can be used to inform policy in really meaningful ways.
Great. So if anyone has any last questions, we'll just wait another minute here. Okay, I think it looks like we've received all your questions at this time, and thank you so much for asking such thoughtful and insightful questions. It's great to have the opportunity to hear from you, and thank you so much for to Alisa for the fantastic presentation today. You can always reach us by email or give us a call. Our contact information is on the help website, and I'll be sure to be in touch with a recording of the webinar as well. And thanks again so much for attending. And our contact information is now on the screen.
I just want to say a thank you as well. We're so encouraged to see so many of you from different areas joining in to listen and ask questions. And if you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. We always say that, but we genuinely mean it. I personally would love to hear from any of you with a phone call or an email if you're interested in learning a bit more.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.